If you do astrophotography, you know that cable management can be a major problem. That's why it's becoming increasingly common to find devices on the market that allow us to connect and power all our astrophotography accessories, managing cables and connections in a more optimal way. Devices like ZWO's ASI were among the first to integrate all connection management into a single device, but there are others like the current Stella Vita from TubeTech or the Pegasus connection boxes. Now, SVBony is joining the game with the new SV241, a powered USB hub that comes to solve this problem at a bargain price of just $60. My name is Miguel Azorín and I welcome you to Natural Portraits. Let's take an in-depth look at this interesting USB hub for astrophotography. As a user of a Pegasus box on the setup I have installed at the remote observatory, the Astrogredos Observatory, which is part of the Cosmoscape project, and as a user of the ASIAR especially, paying attention to its ability to connect and power devices, was really looking forward to trying out this SVBony USB connection hub. It's important for you to know that despite their similarities, this hub is not equivalent to the ASIAR or the Stella Vita, since those two devices have an internal computer that allows us to manage our astrophotography session through an app. This SVBony hub does not have an internal computer. It simply works like, for example, a Pegasus box. It only allows us to connect and power the accessories we use during our astrophotography session. But we will need an external computer, a laptop, or a mini PC to manage the session. Even so, it's a very interesting device for managing our connections, especially at this price, since, for example, the smallest Pegasus box costs around $200. Inside the box, we'll find the hub itself, which, by the way, is very small, as you can see. We'll also find two cables for powering 12-volt devices, a USB 3.0 cable to connect the hub to our computer, and finally, a 12-volt power cable with a car lighter plug to power the hub itself. The hub has threads on the bottom to attach a base that allows us to mount it on a finder's shoe. But it's a bit disappointing not to find this base included in the box. And SVBony doesn't offer this base as an optional accessory either, so we'll have to figure out a way to find this small base ourselves or improvise another method to attach it to our equipment. As for the connections, we find a 12-volt power input for the hub and a USB 3.0 connection that goes to our computer, through which we'll receive all the data managed by the hub. Next, we have 4 12-volt power outputs for our astrophotography device. From here, we can power the cooled astrophotography camera, the focuser if it requires external power, the rotator, dew heater strips, and so on. Anything that needs 12-volt power can be connected directly to any of these 4 outputs. Next, we have 2 more 12-volt power outputs, making a total of 6 12-volt power connections on the same hub. But on this side, we also find 2 USB 2.0 ports. Note that these ports are not data ports, they are 5-volt power ports. Here we can connect, for example, USB-powered dew heater strip. I use them, and they are very practical for small telescopes and camera lenses. And finally, we have the data connection. Here we have a USB-C connection, which, well, isn't widely used yet in the world of astrophotography, but it's there nonetheless. We also find 2 USB 3.0 data ports and 1 USB 2.0 port. And here's where my question comes in. If we usually work with a mini PC that's attached to the telescope itself and we control it wirelessly, we can combine the USB ports of the mini PC with those of this hub and manage all the data from our session between both devices. But if we work with a laptop, as will be the case for many users, we're missing at least one USB 2.0 port. For example, I connect the cooled camera to one of the USB 3.0 ports, the guide camera to another USB 3.0 port, the EAF focuser to the USB 2.0 port, and the mount. Where do I connect that? This forces me to connect at least one of the devices directly to the computer. It's clear that this isn't a big deal, but maybe I would have replaced one of the 5-volt USB 2.0 power ports with a data port, or I would have just sacrificed 2 12-volt power connections for 2 more USB data ports. And with that, I think the product would have been much more well-rounded from my point of view. But anyway, I still think it's an excellent product at a bargain price. Now, all that's left is to see how it performs in a real session. So let's get to it. Alright, team ready to start the astrophotography session testing out this SVBony USB hub, the SV241. As I mentioned a moment ago, I think it's a mistake not to have included an extra USB port, although in this case, I've managed to work around it by using one of the auxiliary USB ports on the astrophotography camera I'm using, the ZW-ASI 294 MegaCoulombs Pro. This camera has two auxiliary USB ports, so what I've done is connect the mount directly to the camera, and that way I only have one USB cable going straight to the computer. I also think it's a mistake not to have included a shoe that would allow us to mount this USB hub in a more convenient way. I've had to secure it here with a zip tie. It's not the best way to attach the USB hub, but for now, that's how I've managed to solve it. As for the equipment used, as you can see, it's the SVBony SV555 Petzval telescope, a 5-lens model with a focal length of 243mm and an aperture of 55mm. All of this is mounted on the ZWO AM5. So with everything ready, I'm going to set up the computer and we'll get started. Alright, the computer is now connected, so let's move on to the real test. Let's open Nina and check if all the devices connect properly. Alright, it looks like the camera is being recognized correctly. ZW-ASI 294 MegaCoulombs Pro, so let's activate it. There we have it, now activated, and I'm going to set it to start cooling. Let's connect the focuser, which is also recognized perfectly. Let's connect the mount, there it is, and let's connect the auto-guiding system. There we have it. Well, it looks like everything has connected properly and without any issues. Now let's do the polar alignment of the setup. Alright, the polar alignment is done, so let's go straight to the session. I have the SVBony SV240 filter mounted on this telescope, a filter I already tested in some previous videos, and we saw that it produced a series of halos around the brightest stars. I think those halos were due to the telescope I use, so what I've done is mount the same filter for this session on this 5-lens Petzval to rule out whether those halos we saw in that video were caused by the filter and not, as I believe, by the telescope. So what I'm going to do is point, in this case, at the same region I photographed in that other video, the region of the Trifid Nebula. Let's see what kind of framing we get with this telescope and this camera. Well, it gives an incredible framing at this focal length at 263mm, and I even love the rotation angle. So let's send the equipment over there. Well, here we already have the framing with the Trifid Nebula, the Lagoon Nebula. A moment ago there were some clouds in the area. I had to wait a bit for those clouds to clear, and I have to say that during that time I had some issues with device disconnections. For example, the auto-guiding system mysteriously just stopped, it stopped working, and on top of that the main camera stopped downloading images. Could this have something to do with the SVBony hub? Well, I couldn't say for sure. It might be related, but I'm not completely sure. And in fact, you can see right now how the auto-guiding system has just stopped altogether. Right now, the mount isn't auto-guiding at all. It's doing something pretty strange. As you can see, I've had to send all the equipment back to the home position again because the mount just stopped, it stopped tracking the sky, the auto-guiding system stopped, everything stopped. Once again, could all of this have something to do with the SVBony hub? Well, we can't be sure, but it might have something to do with it. Let's send the equipment back again. Alright, so there's the framing again. Let's reactivate the auto-guiding system. And while the camera finishes cooling down because I had to turn it off and back on, again after that little disconnection we had, I'm going to take a 300-second photo to see what this framing looks like. Well, here's the first capture and it looks really, really good. Let's see if we can view it in color. Here it is. And I have to say, it looks fantastic. I don't notice any kind of halo around the stars. The stars look really, really good. So as far as the filter is concerned, I think it looks fantastic, especially considering we're under a Bortle 7 sky and pointing south, where there's a ton of light pollution and the object is very, very low in the sky. So let's take advantage of the fact that, for now, fingers crossed, we haven't had any more disconnections, and let's start a sequence of images. And while we're here in the middle of an astrophotography session, I'm actually multitasking because I'm also connected to my remote telescope located at the Astrogrados Observatory, the innovation hub of the Cosmoscape project. Cosmoscape is a telescope hosting facility located in Spain, at the foothills of the Sierra de Gredos and under a Bortel 2 sky. The Astrogrados Observatory is the test observatory where all the technology being implemented in Cosmoscape is being trialed. Here we have the telescope I'm controlling, which is this one right here. This is the stunning sky we have there, and this is what I'm capturing. If you want me to tell you more about the Astrogrados Observatory and the Cosmoscape project, and if you'd like us to do a remote session where I show you what I can do with this equipment, located more than 500 kilometers from my home, let me know in the comments below. So I already have the remote setup running, and we're going to keep focusing on the session we're doing right here, right now. Well, with that, we wrap up the session. The object is already very low on the horizon. The telescope is almost pointing right at the wall behind me, and even so, I managed to capture about 2 hours of integration shots, 24 exposures of 5 minutes each. The rest of the session went pretty well. I didn't have any more disconnections or strange issues, and everything ran quite smoothly. So I think I'll get a good photo out of this session. I'm going to stay here to take some calibration shots, but I'll leave you with the result.